There is a strange magic to living in a moment of dramatic progress. Things that once seemed unimaginable become so normal that we almost forget how difficult they were to achieve. Musicians on the bima. We say, of course our synagogue is egalitarian. We say, of course we celebrate marriage equality. Of course we welcome interfaith families with joy and integrity. But those of courses are new. And as I know so many of you know from experience, they were not always easy. This year at our Holy Hoedown, we celebrated the changing of lay leadership at our synagogue. A moment of gratitude, of continuity, of community pride. Our outgoing president stood before this congregation and thanked his husband for supporting him during his tenure. Our incoming president stood just moments later and thanked his husband. And you know what happened then? We all clapped. No one protested. No one stormed out. No one wrote an angry letter or resigned from the congregation. And here's my guess. Many of you didn't even notice. Not because you don't care, but because you've changed. We've changed. We've grown. And that's the beauty of progress. The moment wasn't orchestrated to prove a point. It was the byproduct of something deeper, of a community that has chosen to become something truer, something wider, something better. A community that has embraced progress not as an act of defiance, but as a path towards blessing. Another example, for the past 3 Purims, a member of the congregation who also happens to perform drag has read Megillah from our bima. Not because we wanted to make a political statement, okay, maybe a little, but because it authentically embodied the message of Purim, a holiday of masks and unmasking, of revealing hidden truths and satire and courageous reversals. And again, you know what happened? No protest, no pushback, just joy, appreciation, and kids who saw something holy in the celebration. We didn't call a board meeting to debate whether the performance would represent us well. We just showed up. We celebrated. We were us. And that's the thing about progress. It just becomes who we are. Progress is not an add-on. Progress is an evolution. And yet, in the broader Jewish world, and frankly in parts of our own Jewish psyches, there are still forces that look at change, that look at progress, that look at the ways in which we are different from those who came before us and say, well, this isn't real Judaism. That progressivism is inauthentic, that inclusion is a compromise, that this is the easy way out. That somehow we are at odds with those who came before us, and that conversation and that conservatism should be the guiding light to the world we want to create. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Because what we are living now is not less than what came before us. In so many ways, it is more. More voices, more love, more participation, more honesty, more access, more Torah. We did not get here by accident. and we cannot stay here by inertia. Progress is not something that just happened to us. It is something we built. And if we want our children and our grandchildren to inherit a Judaism that is vibrant, ethical, joyous, and brave, then we have to be the ones who keep building. This morning, I want to make the case that being a progressive Jew is not an optional flavor of Judaism. It is an essential way of being Jewish today. That progress is not political, it's sacred. And that if we care about the future of Jewish life, we must not merely tolerate progressivism, we must center it in everything we do. Because when we make progress the heart of our Judaism, we honor our past, we heal our present, and we secure our future. Today's Torah reading, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, is a terrifying story. And perhaps even more unsettling is what it leaves unsaid. There are no tears from Sarah when she hears that Abraham took her son up a mountain. No recorded cries from Isaac as he is bound. No trembling hands in Abraham's silence. No protest. No emotional reaction. No processing. Just action. Just obedience. And for generations, that's how it was taught. Abraham passed the test by not flinching, by not asking questions, by being willing to give it all up, but the tradition could not let that stand. Because the rabbis, the sages of our tradition, sensed that something was missing. They sensed that the silence in the text was actually an invitation to speak. And so they filled it. The troves of rabbinic commentary and midrash have lots to say about how we are supposed to understand this story. They imagine that Sarah did scream and died from the shock. They imagine that Isaac did cry and was left with trauma so deep that he never speaks again in the Torah. They imagine that Abraham did hesitate and that God was furious for taking the test too far. In other words, they rewrote the story. Not by erasing the Torah, but by expanding it, by interpreting the story in light of the human truths they knew to be real. That is the spiritual legacy of the type of progressive Judaism I am speaking about. We don't discard Torah, we interrogate it. We sit with it. We say, what might this mean now? What might it require of us today? And it's not always easy. It would be simpler to stay in the world of inherited answers. But Rosh Hashanah is not about staying still. This holiday is about becoming. Like the Akedah itself, Jewish tradition only survives when it is lovingly, courageously transformed. That's not betrayal, it's faithfulness. That's Torah and progress. It's important to take a moment and speak honestly about just how far our Jewish world has come from where we were even a generation ago. Progressive thinking in Judaism, whether labeled Reform, Reconstructionist, Renewal, Conservative, or thoughtful, has shaped the Jewish world in extraordinary ways. It gave us egalitarianism, not just as a token gesture, but as a full embrace of women's voices, leadership, ritual presence, and authority. What was once radical, women reading Torah, leading services, wearing talitot, is now, for many of us, simply what Judaism looks like. It gave us marriage equality. The first same-sex commitment ceremonies in the Jewish world were acts of extraordinary courage, and now we celebrate those weddings with the same joy, the same liturgy, the same chuppah and shattered glass as any other couple. That's not erasure of tradition. It's an expansion of the covenant. It gave us a Judaism that makes space for interfaith families, not as threats to continuity, but as living, breathing, sacred partnerships in the ongoing story of the Jewish people. It gave us rabbis of every gender identity, prayer books with honest theology and inclusive language, mikveh rituals for transition, healing, recovery. It gave us a Judaism that doesn't just tolerate difference, it blesses it. And it gave us institutions like this one. Our synagogue is not some neutral bystander in this story. We are the product of these choices. We are an expression of that progress. We are a place where your family does not have to look a certain way to belong, where you can ask real questions and hopefully get real answers, where the boundaries of peoplehood are porous enough to let people in and strong enough to hold them here once they've arrived. None of this has happened by accident. It happened because brave Jews insisted that Judaism in Tulsa, Oklahoma must not only survive, it must mean something. And that something is exactly what we're still building. One of the biggest misconceptions about progressive Judaism is that it's soft, that it's Judaism light, that somehow it's diluted or easier or less demanding. But here's something we all know. Progress is not easy. It has never been. It takes courage to change tradition. It takes spiritual maturity to admit that some of what we inherited, while beautiful, needs to be reimagined. It takes emotional strength to belong to a community that might not always get it right, but refuses to stop growing. And it takes moral clarity to keep showing up when others accuse your Judaism of being inauthentic. You know what's easy? Memorizing someone else's answers. What's hard is opening yourself up to sacred questioning and still remaining committed, still showing up, still saying, Hineni, here I am. Progressive Jews are often accused of being political, as though caring about justice, equity, and human dignity is some kind of partisan stance. But let's be precise here. It is not political to say that all people are created in the image of God. That's the Torah. It's not political to welcome the stranger, to pursue peace, to love your neighbor. It's not political to oppose racism or anti-Semitism or homophobia or misogyny. That's not left-wing Judaism. It's Judaism. And yet, because we live in a world where even decency has become divisive, progressive Judaism is misunderstood, sometimes intentionally, sometimes innocently, as a threat, a break from the, quote, real thing. Of course, we know better. We know that every generation of Jews has evolved. Every page of the Talmud is full of disagreement. Every sacred innovation from the Siddur to the synagogue to the state of Israel was once controversial. Progressive Judaism is not new. It is what our people have always done. Wrestle with the world and with God until blessings emerge. To be a progressive Jew is not to vote a certain way or belong to a certain movement or align with the politics of the moment. To be a progressive Jew is to believe that Judaism is not a museum. To be a progressive Jew is to believe that Judaism is not a museum. It is a workshop. It's to believe that our sacred inheritance is alive and that our job is not to preserve it under glass, but to shape it with our hands and offer it lovingly to the next generation. To be a progressive Jew is to believe that revelation didn't end at Sinai. It continues in our hearts, in our learning, in our willingness to listen deeply to the voice of conscience. When we say Shema, Vishinantam levanecha, you shall teach these words to your children. But you cannot teach what you are unwilling to explore. You cannot transmit what you are afraid to question. And you cannot preserve what you are too timid to reimagine. Progressive Judaism begins with a simple claim: Torah is not just what we received, it is what we continue to write. We are Abraham arguing with God. We are Deborah leading in a world that didn't know what to do with her leadership. We are Miriam singing freedom into being. We are the students of Hillel and Shammai who disagreed for the sake of heaven. We are the communities who welcomed refugees, reinterpreted halakha, rebuilt Jewish life after tragedy. To be a progressive Jew is to say, this tradition is mine, and I love it too much to let it stand still. It means keeping our heart open. It means telling the truth. It means believing that Judaism is at its best when it is dynamic, ethical, and brave. That's not modern. That's not political. That's Jewish. The future of Judaism does not depend on nostalgia. It does not depend on re-erecting the mechitza or platforming ultra-Orthodox voices as true Judaism. It depends on an inclusive vision. Our children are not asking for a Judaism that only looks backward. They are asking for a Judaism that speaks to the world they live in now. A world of complexity, of moral challenge, of real questions and real longing. And the only way to meet that moment is with a Judaism that is alive and evolving. I believe progressivism is not a threat to its Jewish future. I believe it is the only way forward. It is what allows people to walk through our doors and feel seen. It is what empowers teenagers to take pride in who they are. It what gives converts a path not just to join, but to lead. It is what lets interfaith families feel like full participants in Jewish life. Not visitors, not guests, family. And that is not a deviation from tradition. It is a fulfillment of it. Because Judaism has always been a religion of adaptation. From the moment we left the temple behind and built the synagogue, from the birth of halakha to the pages of the Talmud, we have been reshaping and reforming and reconstructing this tradition. To be clear, I do not mean that anything goes. I do not mean that we discard what we inherited. I mean we cherish it enough to make it sustainable. If we want a Jewish community that is spiritually deep, morally grounded, and actually welcoming, not just in language but in practice, then we must center progressive values at the heart of our communal life. Not just in the margins, not just when it's easy, but as the basis for the way we form all of Jewish Tulsa. We are not less Jewish for evolving, we are more. And the more we claim that truth, the stronger and more vibrant our Jewish future will be. Of course, the world we are building, open, inclusive, evolving, is not without its critics. And their criticism doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it comes from within. There are some who see progress, who see the progress we have made and want to undo it, who dream not of building forward, but of returning backward, to a Judaism that limits women, erases queer lives, delegitimizes liberal streams, and elevates one model of observance as the only authentic one. Some of these voices are quiet and nostalgic. Others are loud and triumphant. But their message is the same, that progress is a mistake, that it's inauthentic, that it's dangerous. And increasingly, that message is being fused with a messianic zeal. We see it when religious fundamentalism justifies violence. When Torah is invoked to defend the demolition of homes or the vigilante takeover of land, when Judaism is reduced to a weapon in a political holy war, when sovereignty becomes a sacred term, but democracy, compassion, and human dignity are dismissed as foreign imports. That is not a Judaism we recognize. We are not obligated to accept interpretations of Torah that do harm in God's name. We are not required to bow before those who would undo decades of Jewish moral courage in pursuit of messianic fantasy. And we should not confuse halachic rigidity with spiritual depth. It is entirely possible to love Jewish tradition, to live it authentically, and also insist that it evolve. That's what the rabbis did. That's what we do. We are not trying to be provocative. We are trying to be honest. Because what we have built here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in this synagogue, in this Jewish community, is good. And it is worth defending. Progressive Judaism is not Judaism in decline. It is Judaism in motion, and there is nothing more Jewish than that. We know this is not just an abstract conversation. We are living through a moment when even how we mourn, even how we speak after tragedy becomes politicized. The language of cancel culture and free speech is being hurled back and forth like weapons, but Torah reminds us that speech is not a weapon at all. It is a sacred trust. Judaism has always defended words of dissent, of questioning, of truth-seeking, but it has also demanded that our words build dignity rather than strip it away. Progressive Judaism does not ask us to silence those we disagree with, nor to celebrate those who fall. It asks us to remember that every human being is B'Tselem Elohim, created in the image of God. And it means speaking even in our fiercest debates with reverence for life. So what now? What do we do with all of this? We recommit. We recommit to the idea that progress is not a passing phase, it's the lifeblood of our people. It's how we got here, and it's our only way forward. We recommit to a Judaism that is brave enough to welcome and strong enough to evolve, a Judaism that isn't afraid of modernity because it knows that truth is not the enemy of tradition, it is its fulfillment. And we do this, of course, with open eyes. Because we know that the winds are shifting, that there are those pushing for a return to older hierarchies, that some would strip away the dignity and belonging that so many of us have only recently gained, that some use Torah not to bind us together, but to divide and dominate. But we are not going back. Not because the old ways were evil. Many of them carried beauty and meaning. But because we know how much more is possible when every voice is heard, when every family is honored, when every human being is treated in the image of God. So in this new year, let us be a congregation that redoubles our efforts towards inclusion and progress. Let's raise our children to believe in a Judaism that matches the best of their values. And may this year we walk forward, not in fear, not in retreat, but with pride, hope, clarity, and joy. So may it be a blessing on this new year. Together let us say, Amen.